the way it's done, that our people do not lose the only wealth they might have in livestock. You can imagine what it means being set back to zero every year and how difficult it is to manage families and therefore become a part of a progressive Kenya. The Speaker, sir, I would like to see a lot more preparedness, drought preparedness, and I don't see that being allocated adequately. I think there's room for national government also to think internally on the efficiency in which they allocate resources. Mr. Speaker, sir, there are resources that go to the county government, and I would have preferred that we go along with a compromise towards some increased allocation as suggested by the Senate. I think we are going through a transient period in which, for example, we are now facing elections. In any case, these monies we are talking about are not likely to be released anywhere during the cycle of this election. These are funds that will come in the course of the next year. I agree that there has been a lot of apparent surpluses within counties, as evidenced by the amount of waste that people have observed and others have examined, including the Auditor General. But let us differentiate mismanagement by managers who are in there, this first round of managers, either through greed or incompetence, may be misusing resources. And let's be clear that it's not those individuals that are the fault. It's the system that's at fault. They are too at fault. They're not to blame. But that the resources that are needed for the county government and for devolution are indeed important resources. It's the better part of the use of our budget resources. That's what really goes down to the people. In many counties around the country, particularly countries that were far from the center, you find that the only thing in town that has happened is devolution. Health facilities may be struggling. The supply of medications may have only improved modestly or perhaps not at all. But let me tell you, the amount of inflow of resources in these geographic areas of this country has made a difference. If you are to measure some of this by the amount of construction that goes on, by the flow of resources from the business community and others into the banking sector, you would find that indeed devolution has a certain way of providing resources that are circulating in areas that are far away from Nairobi, as had been the case. Why is it, for example, that in and around Nairobi, most of this wealth is concentrated? Because they had easy access to it, they had access to contracts, and the reasons are not in any way ethnic, the way I see it. There are class issues, that you have access to resources, you take advantage of it, it doesn't matter where originally your mother brought you into this world. So what we have to remember from it, if we move these resources around the country, the impact on this country is going to be significant, as determined by the people themselves in the areas where these resources will go. So none of these arguments, Mr. Speaker, sir, should lead us in any way to re-question the need for...
Give me this opportunity to be able to support this bill, the Division of Revenue Bill. And true to the fact, Mr. Speaker, this bill was in this House a few days ago, and we were able to, but that does not stop us from giving our input. First and foremost, Mr. Speaker, and I want to raise where one of the honourable members had said, that as we look into this bill, we also need to take cognizance of the local revenue by the local counties. And it is important for us, particularly, to see the amount of the charges that they charge on their levy as they collect. Because I think from the 31-point-something% that has been given to the county governments, it is important that whenever they do their local resources, when they collect their own monies, that they also need to take into consideration to stop overtaxing and overcharging, and sometimes double taxation on the local mwananchi. And this, of course, with the new constitution, it has given them that mandate. Unlike in the old constitution, where the former municipal councils needed to get some clearance from the Ministry of Local Government to be able to increase any levies or any charges that was going. So it's important for us to be able to look at, and critically, Mr. Speaker, as you have said, with the Cities and Urban Act, as you have rightfully said, I come from an urban county, a county that has an urban setup. And we, under the same act, we wanted a municipal board. And we tried, at individual level, and we didn't know where to. We were trying to plead with the sitting governor to be able to give us a municipal board in Nakuru town municipality, but the governor refused completely because he was thinking that he's going to share part of responsibility with the Nakuru municipal board members, which unfortunately has left the Nakuru Town East as a constituent and as a member of Parliament of Nakuru Town East constituents, where we give over 70% of the Nakuru County revenue, and then when it comes to sharing of the revenue, we are never considered. We are given an equal amount of resources with other sub-counties which basically give almost nothing towards the basket of the Nakuru County. So I think, as you had advised, I think we need, as members of parliament, as citizens of various counties, we need to look at, in terms of actualizing and implementation of the Urban and Cities Act, so that we can be able to, like what I'm saying in Nakuru, we could be having the Nakuru Municipal Board, that it's a board that we could be approaching in terms of wanting to see development, wanting to see the advancement in terms of tourism sector, in terms of the road network and the like. So it is important for us, and I think it's a good challenge, Mr. Speaker, that you have given us, as also as members of parliament, to start thinking as to how do we actualize that very important act that talks so much in terms of improving the urban setup. Mr. Speaker, looking at the bill itself, where it talks, and especially evaluation of the bill against Article 203, sub-Article 1 of the Constitution. And I think, Mr. Speaker, it talks about the criteria the criteria include factors such as national interest, public debts, and other national obligation. And I think this is where we also want to think as the national government on how much we are able to manage our public debt. Yes, this public debt does bring a lot of economic development to our country, but at the same time we also need to look at the value that we normally get from the public debt, so that we can be able to enhance the development aspect of our economy. And I think that public debt and public interest, and this is where, Mr. Speaker, we really need to take into consideration various different geographical areas and their requirements for us to be able to include. And this, I'm saying, this is also particularly on matters of national interest. And this is where, like in our Nakuru County, when we were passing our Wildlife and Conservation Act, we have over 7 national parks, actually 11 national parks. We were only pleading that we could have at least 1 or 2 that would have been left for Nakuru County to be able to enhance its revenue base. But unfortunately, we are unable, but we shall be bringing a few other amendments in the same Wildlife and Conservation Act to be able to have at least 1 national park converted into a game reserve. And that would, the revenue that is, will be sourced from that game reserve will go a long way to try and improve. Mr. Speaker, one aspect of the conditional grant is about the health sector. Already in this parliament, I am a vice chair of the implementation committee, and we are looking at the report which was given by the committee on health matters on proposing that the function should be brought back to the national government. Mr. Speaker, it is good that a lot of money has been given for purposes of improving the health sector on conditional grant. But, Mr. Speaker, we also need, and this we are asking the Senate, to be a little bit vigilant and a little bit, to take some due diligence that these monies are supposed to be spent for the purpose of the health matters. Mr. Speaker, in Nakuru County, for example, there is already an audit query of over 600 million shillings, which was ring-fenced only for purposes of improving our only the PGH, the General Hospital in Nakuru. But the money was spent to pay workers as per the report of the Auditor General. And that money has never been reallocated back for the purpose for which. So we also want, and we wonder sometimes what the Senate does, because they needed to take some action against the culprit of the people who spent over 600 million shillings, which was meant for purposes of the health sector. But again, it was taken to pay wages. And of course, the county assembly did speak that there is a huge workforce, and people are forever being engaged again and employed at the Nakuru County. And when the county assembly spoke and gave the governor conditions to be able to take action, the governor never took action against that. Secondly, Mr. Speaker,
then access and affordability would be guaranteed. We talked devolution so that when you talked about healthcare services, then we were guaranteed that healthcare services would actually be better than they were under the management of national government. And so I want to fault a lot of county governments, starting with my own county government of Busia, which has been a total disaster in the provision of basic social services like water, like healthcare, agricultural extension services, and even maintenance of rural access roads. And just hope that as we approve this money, the short period between now and August 8th, when we go to the elections, will be a period when we can protect these resources and ensure that nobody will fiddle with this money, play around with this money, because of the knowledge that we are all busy with the elections. And just send a very clear warning to every governor out there. You shall be accountable for every penny of this money expended, whether well or badly, under your watch. And whether you are re-elected or not, you shall be held accountable for these resources as we pass this division of revenue bill. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Member for.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this bill. And on the onset, I want to say that I support the bill. Mr. Speaker, I join my colleagues in saying that it is unfortunate that this bill has taken the period of time it has taken. And I agree very much with my former chair when I was privileged to be in his committee one time, that indeed, even under our Constitution, I think this issue of dealing with this particular bill, Mr. Speaker, which has now proved to be challenged time and again, and unfortunately this time round, even more challenging than we have seen in the past few years, is an issue that we need to revisit as a nation, to relook at our Constitution and see how we can improve this process for the interest of Kenyans. The risk we run, Mr. Speaker, is that should this bill continue to delay like we have seen it happen now, then counties are likely to face cash crisis in the very near future. And knowing that this is an election year, and knowing also that Kenya is now facing a serious drought, particularly in the areas where I come from in Garissa County, some of these funds, Mr. Speaker, in the various counties of the country are needed very much this time round more than ever before. I do not agree very much with the fear that some outgoing governors might steal this money and run away with it. No, our Constitution is very clear under Article 226, subsection 5, Mr. Speaker. Any government official, whether now or in the, whether you are in office or you are outside your office, you will be held, liable for any loss that you approved or you caused to happen, and you will actually, under the Constitution, even be forced, if found guilty, to repay back that money. You'll be surcharged of that money. So for those who think that now we are leaving office We can eat and run away, my friend. You can only run away with problems that will catch up with you in the near future. So for those governors, I want to say that those funds need to be looked at very, very carefully. Mr. Speaker, 291 million is an amount that is an improvement of about 10 million more than we gave the counties the last financial year. And I think this is improvement. This is good for Kenyans. And I want to urge those governors whose counties are lagging behind. It's very unfortunate because many counties, or quite a number of counties, like I have seen the county of Wajir when I was there, my good friend Ahmed Abdullahi has indeed caused a real change to the people and the lives of Wajir, and I commend him. He is a person and a colleague who I respect very much, and I feel very proud about that the county government of Wajir has time and again been seen as being one of the best counties in Kenya. So for that reason, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that governors should emulate good practices in terms of good financial management. And I want to say now you have more support with the 4.5 billion shillings of leasing of equipments, which I think is a good idea. I know I've challenged this before, but I have seen diabetes patients in the counties who otherwise will have to travel all the way from Garissa to Nairobi, now receiving those services at far more lower prices, at far more cheaper prices. And I want to say that I think this equipment leasing might not necessarily have been a bad idea at all, but I agree with the colleagues who asked, for how long shall we lease these machines for? We cannot afford as a country to continue to pay 4.5 billion shillings to lease equipments. It definitely, on the long run, will be more economically viable for us to be able to say that we need to purchase those machines and own them ourselves, rather than paying that monies or continuing to pay those monies to business people. Level 5 hospitals, Mr. Speaker, the condition of level 5 hospitals in many of our counties still remains to be in very, very poor state. It is unfortunate because this is the highest level of medical services, institution that can give medical services to our people in the various parts of the country. And I want to urge the governors, with monies like this allocated to you, 4.2 billion shillings allocated to you for this, the unconditional grants, this taken away, they now find themselves in the villages, or those who even perform poorly in the Form 4 exams and wish to continue with life. These village polytechnics is the biggest opportunity to help them get those critical skills which can help them get self-employment. Mr. Speaker, the counties time and again have gotten these monies, but unfortunately there is not much on the ground in terms of village polytechnics. And I want to urge the governors that it is for the betterment of Kenyans, for our country, for our people, that we make sure that this village polytechnics, those existing ones, be rehabilitated for the funds, in this case, 2 billion shillings given for that purpose, and for those who do not have, should take the opportunity to put up those facilities to help Kenyans equip themselves with critical knowledge to their lives. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the 7.9 billion shillings which has been given for the fuel levy fund, Mr. Speaker, what has happened recently is that a number of roads that otherwise used to come under KERA, or the Kenya Rural Roads Authority, have now been put under the county governments. I have, for example, in my own constituency, one of the roads that is a very well-known trade route between the town of Balambala and the town of Danyere, Mr. Speaker, which has been handed over to the county government. Unfortunately, for 2 years now, this road has not received any attention. I just want to urge the county government, now that you are receiving monies like 7.9 billion shillings, Mr. Speaker, there is no excuse at all why such a roads should remain unattended and impassable in some places, like the example of the road that I have mentioned now. Mr. Speaker, I do not want to say much further on this bill. Much has been said by my colleagues, and I have no intention to repeat the good points that have already been said, but I just wanted to urge our colleagues in the other house to realize the urgency with which this bill is being awaited for. The county governments will not be able to, because they have to do a lot of things. This, we are doing the vertical split, which means share of revenue between the counties and the national government. That's what we are doing today. And the Senate is required to do the horizontal split, give it to the respective counties, and each county is then...
Now you can be seen. Indeed, actually, you are second last. But the luck is that a number of the members who are ahead of you have already spoken. There are members who spoke and went back and pulled back their cards, and they are ahead of you. But let the Honorable Bandi make his points.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the MP for Kisumu East will have his time, I think, very soon. I can see he's really agitated. But, Mr. Speaker, I started by saying that Chapter 12 is one of the most comprehensive chapters of our Constitution, detailing the processes of budget making. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to go further and even mention that we have an omnibus law in the name of Public Finance Management Act, which collapsed all the previous statutes that were dealing with public finance management in this country. And this law, looking at it, and you take the sections that deal with the budget-making process, it is exhaustive, very simple, and easy to understand. But, Mr. Speaker, we are here today dealing with a situation that could have been avoided easily if we followed the budget-making process as spelled out in law. Number one, Mr. Speaker, the budget-making process starts in the month of September. And that is the time that the Cabinet Secretary engages with the line ministries and even makes forecasts. And, Mr. Speaker, this comes a long way to budget policy statement, all the way to division of revenue bill. And, Mr. Speaker, one would expect that we exhaust all the avenues provided for in law to avoid conflict of whatever nature. There is, as Honorable Nyikal did mention, the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council, which brings together stakeholders. This is chaired by the Deputy President, and almost every individual, every institution, every body that is relevant in public finance comes to that council. And our chair of the Budget Committee is a member of that council. And I want to say and explain that the reason why Senate is not represented in this body is because no one imagined, in my view, and this is a position I've held consistently on this matter, that no one imagined that Senate would be involved in the vertical sharing of revenue. That wasn't supposed to be a function of the Senate. But I'm fully aware that the Supreme Court really pronounced itself through advisory opinion, which we have to live with, that Senate is to be involved in this matter. Hence, where we are today, stalemate between the two houses. I want to just talk to the people of Kenya that going forward, a decision will have to be made. Whether the current arrangement, where we have two sister houses, which a lot of these two sister houses which a lot of times end up disagreeing on vertical division of revenue, whether we want to continue that way or we revert to a system where we give either exclusive authority to the National Assembly to divide revenue between the national government and the county governments, or give Senate a role, but give them a veto power, if that is what we want. Because we cannot continue with a system as critical, as important of division of revenue, and we put the two houses and we give them equal power. This is going to put this country into unnecessary disagreements, and I've spoken here before, I've said, at least for now, the Jubilee side of both houses has majority, and we still have this stalemate. Assume we'll have a system where two coalition parties have majority in either houses, where, say, Jubilee has majority in the Senate and NASA has majority in the National Assembly, or vice versa. We will always, every year, have a stalemate of this nature. And I don't think that is very healthy for this country. So if we want, as a country, to have both houses, National Assembly and the Senate, devolution for, we haven't realized it, we haven't achieved it. But does that mean, therefore, that we are going to starve counties of resources just because there are some rogue officers of county government embezzling funds or misusing resources that we vote to the counties? My answer is no. We have, as a country, a responsibility
between the two houses. So as we are discussing this, we should actually make the country aware that there is a serious problem whenever these two houses do not agree. That begs a question, Madam Speaker, whether the two houses in this country were necessary. To me, Madam Speaker, they were not. Because, you know, the Senate, the work of the Senate is duplicated at the county level by the county assembly. Therefore, in terms of oversight, the county assembly, which is, if enough capacity is given to the county assemblies, they can do what the Senate is doing. At the end of the day, what we are passing here, the Constitution says that all the bills must be passed by the National Assembly. So at the end of the day, what we are doing and what the Senate is doing is a duplication. And therefore, we need to rethink again in future. Because if we are talking about Senate is talking on behalf of the counties, and if their work is only to come and bring conflict between the two houses, then it is unnecessary, Madam Speaker. And therefore, I want to say this budget is very, very important, and it's very good. The way it has been done here is very good. And I want to bring the country to speed that the national government has really tried, because right now we are talking about almost at 5% of the national revenue going to counties. And at the same time, the national government is supporting very serious projects which are being done at the county level. And among them is a kind of equipment which has been released on behalf of the county government. Though the county governments earlier had refused to take those equipment, but they are doing a great job. Right now, the counties which have fitted those machines, they are offering state-of-the-art services to the wananchi, and that is very good, Madam Speaker. It's also important that our people know that the counties are supposed to charge some user fee for using the facilities, which were actually minimal. At some point, they used to pay 20 shillings, sometimes 100 shillings to visit government hospitals. The national government, through conditional allocations, have actually given the counties 900 million to cater for free attention at the medical clinics at the county level. So the people in Kenya should know that the national government has done a good job. Other than providing medical equipment, the government has also paid through conditional allocation for the use of hospitals. But how many hospitals offer free attention? Very many of them, you go there, you pay, you still pay. And in fact, almost all of them, you pay for medicine, or you are told to go to pharmacies. Therefore, I will urge the counties to get more organized and get the people enjoy the services which are seriously compensated by the national government. On the other side, when it comes to youth empowerment, the youth of this country have always been taken rounds and rounds in terms of empowerment. But the government has done great. One, we have provided money for youth empowerment through the youth fund. At the same time, through the Ways of Fund programs. And at the county level, we have, this budget has provided 2 billion shilling for rehabilitation of youth polytechnics. These youth polytechnics are very important in terms of giving the youth the skills which are required. It is high time that we embrace technology. And we actually have to tell our youths that it's no longer time to wait to be employed. The youths can actually become employers of choice in this country through proper technical training. At the county level, the youths who are not able to proceed to high school are actually encouraged to go to youth polytechnic, place called Brook to Chepseon to Kipkelion and to Londiani, all the way to Makutano. That is the only road, together with the one starting from a place called Chepsir to Kuresoi. Those are the only two roads which are remaining in Kera. The rest have been transferred to county governments, and therefore, that explains the allocation from fuel levy of 15% of 7.8 billion, which we should actually make people aware that this money has been taken to counties, and therefore the rehabilitation of roads, which used to be done under national government, are now squarely in the county governments, Madam Speaker. I want also to add something on what the World Bank has given through conditional grants. These conditional grants are important, and I'm happy that the World Bank has given grants to support the performance by the county governments, the various county governments, through what they call Kenya Devolution Support Program, KDSP, has given 1.5 billion, which will be given together with 4 billion to strengthen public finance management systems in counties. And to this one will be given to those counties which have been assessed independently, and they have actually been seen to be competitive. And this is very important, because once these people, once the counties are supported, it will encourage those counties which are below par to also come up. Because once we move to performance-based funding, this will be very good for future management, and especially those counties which have not been doing very well. But as Speaker, the national government, on the other part, on this financial year, has continued strengthening the several activities which are of national interest, Madam Speaker. One of them being enhanced security operations. We have seen a lot of improvement in terms of funding of security issues, Madam Speaker, and education and support of the national social safety net. And this is very good, Madam Speaker. I want to say I support this bill, and I want to ask this House to continue supporting, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to give the Honorable Shakil Shabir. You have your bite now, Shabir, and don't take it on us. I know many people are hurting in this House, but let's keep the matters of this House here, and those other ones we can sort them out. But have your bite now, Honorable Shakil.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. But we must say that one cannot stay here for 2 hours and we are then put in the back by a mistake of a clerk which can be rectified. And I'm sorry about it, but it is the case. I'm not saying that this place is rigged. These machines are bad, but the clerks themselves should be able to correct this thing. Anyway, on the issue of division of revenue, Madam Speaker, devolution has been a fight that we have fought for a long time. We started a long time ago. We sat through the Constitution review, and we struggled over the issue of the division of revenue. Change takes time. We agreed that there was going to be a vertical split. The vertical split was the responsibility and the authority lay with the National Assembly. At that time, we discussed in great detail the role of the Senate. It is many of those senators who are now sitting there who in Navasha restricted the role of the Senate to ensure that devolution was not killed off by a rogue National Assembly. Unfortunately, it is the other way around. It is the National Assembly who's trying to keep the national purse and the systems in order. It is for the Senate, as we said, to then do the horizontal split. The vertical split and the horizontal split are very easy when you speak about him in those manners. But remember, we inherited a system that had inherent problems when it came to the issue of devolution. The idea was that we did not want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And as Dr. Nyekal, Mheshimiwa Nyekal said, and I agree with him, this issue of the division of revenue is more an issue of procedure and process than the issue of the particular items on that particular bill. And I know that there was another proposal to cut short this debate because this bill had come earlier. We must, as the National Assembly, work and understand that this issue has many repercussions. We, as a National Assembly, are part of the cog. But if the clock is broken, we can only fix it fix it in stages. As such, when it comes to the issue of the National Assembly and the Senate and the governors must also play their role. Much has been spoken about what should and what should not have been. The issue is, as we said, we threw out the local authorities without care to see whether we were throwing out the good bits with the bad bits. We did throw out very many good bits. And the local authority system is one we inherited since 1965 and before that under the British and our colonial government. So the problem that we are facing is not new and it's not going to be solved this time. It's not going to be solved in another couple of years until we finally understand which cog runs what. Unfortunately, the Senate and the governors seem to think that the National Assembly is becoming a block to their machinations. Unfortunately, the systems that we were set up before, like the transitional authority, this transitional authority, instead of being extended, was terminated very earlier on. Then this division of revenue also, what people do not understand perhaps, it is not only the revenue, but the revenue sources. It is the revenue sources, and many of these have been squandered. Many of these have been lost between the transfer from the local authorities to the county government. I can know about Kisumu, we lost a lot of good assets, we don't know where they are, houses and etc. So when we are now looking at the division of revenue, as it was said by my good friend, the former PS Nyekal, that these are not simple issues. It has ramifications, and one must be able to look at those details. And I'm suggesting in this moment in time that at this time, that although we pass this revenue bill, and I sit on the budget committee as well, we pass it with some sort of trepidation that it is not going to solve the problem. Madam, you cannot solve a long-term problem with a short-term solution. And likewise, you cannot solve a short-term problem with a long-term solution. So both ways we are stuck, and both ways this is going to be taken this year, and it's going to be in the 12th Parliament, and we hope that we shall be able to solve this problem. With those remarks, and I apologize, but I do seriously feel that I was hard done by. I do apologize for my outburst, and I thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Shakil.
For the last 3 years, there's not a single time, not a single year, that we've gone down or we've gone below the subsequent years. So I think that this is something that needs to be appreciated. But as we do this, one or two things needs to be mentioned that number one, for example, the Senate doesn't go through the kind of pain this House goes through in terms of managing or handling the budget process. I think either we subject the Senate to some good amount of pain to understand what we go through as this House, for them to understand that rather than coming up with figures that no, it is supposed to be 38, supposed to be the other figures, without looking through in terms of what the others and the other factors are being looked at, I think is one thing that is taking us back. The clamor that the Senate has in terms of increasing this amount of money, if they bother to explain at one moment, for example, that they have looked at Articles 2 or 3 of the Constitution and that indicated very clearly that the reasons why some of these monies are required, I think that must have been a much more useful way of looking at it than just coming up with the global figures from one year to the other, that this time it was this, next year it must be that. In a similar manner, I think the Commission for Revenue allocation also needs to adjust, because I think this, partly they are also misleading the Senate, because quite a bit of time, the Senate wants to be closer to their figures in terms of when we are looking at the issue of revenue division. Now, if the Senate bothered, for example, to look at Articles 2 or 3, and would have mentioned just very quickly, for example, that no, there will be a basis of increasing the monies, for example, based on the need for economic optimization of each country, that if counties came up with some kind of a creative ways or how they wanted to optimize in terms of their economic arrangement, that would have been a much more better reason of coming up with different figures from time to time or coming up with new amounts. Because as we look at it, when you look at it, the process of transferring functions has not been properly completed in this country. The process of costing these functions has not been properly completed in this country. So when each year we want monies to go to the counties, and we are not too sure whether those functions were transferred, I think that we are doing a big blunder. The issue of funds needs to go punch by punch with functions. That if we gave these functions to a county government, we costed that function and we know is how much money, then we followed that with money or complaining that that money has not been transferred. It makes more sense than the way we are handling it as a country at the moment, particularly how the Senate is looking at it. The other thing that I think is a big problem is exactly the kind of a pain I mentioned earlier. If you look at Articles 220 and 221, 222 of the Constitution, these are areas that are giving the National Assembly a lot more roles in terms of looking at the budget of this country. The CS in charge of finance tables to us the estimates each year. This doesn't happen at any moment with the Senate. The Senate doesn't have an equivalence where, for example, a cumulative presentation of the 47 counties are placed in front of them, indicating that these were the expenditures, the expected expenditure, this expected revenue, such that they are able to balance themselves. So in terms of when the Senate doesn't have all this and doesn't consider many of these things and comes up constantly with a higher figure that a year has turned and now we need to go up beyond what we had last year, I think there must be a very good basis, which we still don't have at the moment. So Madam Speaker, I think that there's a bigger problem. Either it's a constitutional issue that must be handled, or like some of my colleagues have suggested here before, that we must get a very informal way of engagement before some of these things are placed or go at this level where now a bill has to be brought more or less the same twice or thrice, and it's the same. And we are talking about the same things. So, Madam Speaker, I want to support the bill, but those are concerns that, in my view, really needs to be checked as we move forward in the subsequent or in the next years, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Now, the Honorable Lelit, what's your point of order?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I stand on a point of on Standing Order 95 to move that the mover be called upon to reply. Madam Speaker, we've discussed this bill excessively, and Madam Speaker, we are now repeating ourselves, and Madam Speaker, without anticipating anything, we have a lot of business in the House to go through. So, Madam Speaker, I don't see anything that could be said on the Division of Revenue Bill that has not been said. So I want to ask that the mover be allowed to reply.
Well, is that the feeling of the members of the House? Okay, honorable members, you know we always put it to the vote. As many as of that opinion that we ask the mover to reply, as many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Okay, thank you, members. Now, the Honorable Kaluma, when we have already put the question and we have, you must have been very busy doing other things. I know there's a lot of catching up to do. Let us now allow the Honorable Chairman of Budget and Appropriation Committee to reply. Honorable Mutamba Msiemi.
I thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, mine is the happy task of thanking the honorable members